And we are live. Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Carducci. Full disclosure, I have a sinus infection. So if I seem a little off my game, which a lot of my trolls will say is par for the course, I apologize in advance. But I am joined by my senator, Senator Andy Kim. Welcome to the Siren. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks so much for joining us. You are blowing up Twitter right now about yesterday's FCC hearing, and I want to get to that. But first, actually, I want to talk to you about something on a more human level. I've actually had the pleasure and privilege of being able to meet you in person twice, actually. And when you meet somebody in person, it just changes the dynamic a little bit. So I feel like I know you as opposed to just knowing you across a screen. And I just wanted to start with a conversation about what is going on with your dad. You've been very open about what's happening with your father's health, and you've posted about it and you've talked about it. And I think what you're shining a light on is incredibly important. But I wanted to first say that from my heart, that my heart is with you and your family as you go through what you're experiencing right now. So do you want to start there and why you wanted to share your father's story?
Thank you. Yes, last week was the 1 year anniversary of me being on the Senate, and I delivered, a big speech where it was, the hardest speech I've ever given in my life. It was also the most personal speech I've ever given. And it was about how my father, just a couple weeks ago, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and how I was there with him in the doctor's office. The doctor asked him, just some memory tests. What does your son do? What job does your son have? And my father no longer remembers what I do, no longer remembers that he was there with me a year ago as I got sworn in as the first Korean American senator in the history of this country. But then also asked him, what did you do in your life? And my father said, I don't know, which was just so tragic, because what my father actually did do is he was a medical researcher that was actually trying to cure cancer and Alzheimer's. And so for the idea that Alzheimer's has now erased from my father's memory his life's work trying to cure Alzheimer's, you can't help but feel like Alzheimer's won. So I was sharing this not just as a way for people to get a sense of what my family's going through, but millions of families, 7 million people in this country have Alzheimer's, tens of millions of family members struggle with this, are caregivers for family members with Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, and so many other ailments. And, many of them are in even more dire circumstances than my family is. But it's so much to go through on just the health level, but also at the financial level. It has been financially catastrophic for my family, as has been for many others. So I took a leap of faith here in sharing, some of the most personal things that I'm struggling with the American people. But I will tell you, Joe, like one thing that just was so heartening is I've received thousands of messages from people around the country sharing and saying that's what our family's going through, or we just went through that, or we're scared about going through that. I think so often we don't like to talk publicly about things that we struggle with the most, but we need to, because these are the things that the American people need the help with the most. And it so often is invisible, stays under the radar, and as a result, it's often ignored in Capitol Hill and in politics. And I'm trying to change that.
And that's one of my favorite things about you is, and a friend of mine, I told him you were coming on, and he said, he seems like any one of us, right? He seems like, a regular guy. And having met you again, you are, but of course you're a United States senator, and senators can often, anybody in Congress, lawmakers in general, for a lot of people, they can seem out of touch. They can seem like they just don't relate. They don't understand. They live in some kind of insulated bubble where they're, taking their Senate elevator and dining in the Senate cafeteria, and they aren't really dialed into the real lived experience of the American people, and that's always been one of the trademarks of your approach to all of this, and it's one of the things that is so refreshing, and I appreciate your vulnerability, because it is so empowering for so many people when they feel seen, when someone in a position of power or in position of influence says, me too, I see you, I'm walking that same experience, and I care about making this easier for you, but for also for my family. And this is, you are very emblematic of so many Americans, because you have to take care of your aging father who's ailing, and you have young kids at the same time. And that can be so catastrophically financially, and I don't want to use burdensome, because I don't want to present like your father or your children are a burden, but it can be untenable where families are making impossible choices. They're losing their homes. They're not able to support all of these things that they have to take care of. And I want to talk about that too, because it seems as though the Democrats are still the only people who care, or at least acknowledging that this is a reality for people. And so I want to talk about, what kind of things the Democrats can offer to the American people who are in these unique situations that the Republicans are unwilling to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I got an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, 2 little boys. I'm part of this sandwich generation that, again, so many are going through. And I struggle with this a lot, but I also have come to understand, like, it's important to have the voices of parents of young kids in the U.S. Senate. There are not that many of us, that are on the younger side that have young families, but are also going through this experience. And I hope people see me as someone who can get some glimpse of this and feel some of it. I had a neighbor a couple years ago put a for sale sign on her home back in Jersey. And I was like, well, what's going on? Like, why are you moving? And she just started breaking down crying, talking about how this was supposed to be their forever home, but her husband got dementia and they couldn't afford his care, and they needed to sell the home to be able to have money for his care. And she was just like, I hope one day you can fix this. And I'll be honest with you, Joe, like, I didn't fully understand at the time what she was going through. I could empathize with it. I could get a sense, but I do now. I know what she's going through now. I know, and I'm not saying that, people in political office have to have every single experience to be able to fully understand, but it's to have something where, like, for me, all I want for my family and for my dad is, like, I want him to get the best care that he can get. But what I'm stuck with is trying to figure out what is the best care for him that I can afford. And that's just such a different conversation, right? Like, I constantly feel like I am inadequate as a son, that I should have put aside more money or thought about this ahead of time and done some planning. Like, I just always feel like I'm falling short, that I'm not, now I can't save for my kids' college funds and other things like I was planning to now. So now I feel like not only am I short on my father, but I'm not necessarily preparing my kids and being the father that I need to be. And I think it's important for us to be open about this. But this is what you're getting at, is like, the question now is, what do we do about this? How do we try to fix this? And it is so difficult for me to be given this speech on the Senate floor, knowing full well that this body, the U.S. Senate, the Republican majority, voted against providing healthcare support for millions of families that are going through similar, if not more dire conversations at home than what my family's going through. That so many people in my state, over 20 some million around this country, are going to see catastrophic increases in their health insurance, 4 million likely to lose their care. Like, that's like, what are we doing? Like we should be approaching this not as statistics, but as if these were our own families. And because, they are, like, our neighbors, our community members. And so I'm so devastated that we're wrapping up here in Congress without having solved this problem of figuring out how to extend, the tax credits for those on the Affordable Care Act. And, this holiday season is supposed to be a joyous one, but for millions of Americans, it's going to be dire and devastating to them, because they know starting January 1st, they're going to be in a really tough spot. And I'm sad that we weren't able to deliver for them.
And the American people, they understand that this is not a political issue, right? Illness doesn't care how you vote, and they're looking to their elected officials, and they're asking for help, and they're seeing the Republicans' unwillingness from the top down. I mean, we do have a little bit of movement on the House side with that, discharge petition yesterday or the day before. A few Republicans joined ranks with the Democrats, but then they packed up and Mike Johnson is sending everybody home. And we don't know if there'll ever be a vote in the Senate on that at all. But it's supposedly the richest country in the world, right? Yeah. Your dad, like my dad, came here from another country seeking, a better life, seeking the promise of America, the opportunities that America, could deliver if you worked hard and you did the right things. And your dad was able to, despite, being ill as a child and despite so many disadvantages of coming here, not speaking the language, not having anything, he was able to build lives for all of you, for your family, for himself. And my dad did that too. And it feels like America is not, returning the favor, when you see what's happening to your dad and what Republicans in Congress are unwilling to do for the American people. This is a human issue. And we need so much fundamental change, but we have to get the other side to understand this. And I think that's why what you're doing is so important, by having these honest conversations that show people who may not have voted for you, who may not align with you on a lot of your ideologies or your political positions or policies, but on this they do, because this transcends politics. And it's so important that you're doing this, and I think it's incredibly brave that you're doing it, and I think we need more of it, to be honest.
Yeah, many of the people that wrote to me about their own experiences, a number of them self-identified as Republicans and voted for Trump, but like, this is something that's all of us are going through. It's a fundamental human experience of raising families and being concerned about they are in time of need, whether they are sick or injured or what. Like, those are the fundamental experiences. And I've been just trying to think through, as I've been here in the Capitol 7 years now, been here through pandemics, been here through January 6th, these instances that I had hoped would break through this partisanship and this tribalism. And unfortunately, we failed as a country to be able to unite around those incredibly challenging times. So, part of this effort right now is me thinking, well, look, maybe focusing on these incredibly just very human experiences, maybe that's something that can try to break through and transcend this partisanship, for us all to recognize that Alzheimer's doesn't attack just Democrats or Republicans. These illnesses that of growing old, that our family gets as they grow older, it makes no difference. So why don't we just work together on this? So this is my effort, trying to think about this, not just in terms of shining a light and hopefully making some real changes that can help people, but it's also a project of mine to try to figure out, how do we find an agenda, a vocabulary, a way forward that can be unifying at a time when everything feels like it's spinning out of control. I don't see how anyone can see the news and see what's happening and not think we are moving in the wrong direction as a country.
Yeah. And I think a big part of that is the on some level, I think intentional, separating us and pitting us against each other, and the diluting of our humanity. And that's why, when you bring your humanity to the forefront, when you tell your personal stories, I think, if anything, that is exactly how you do it. That is exactly how you pierce that bubble and transcend politics, when you're talking to people on a human level, because they're so accustomed now to it being just, one side versus the other. He said, she said, we're going to get in our foxholes and disagree on everything, but we actually have more in common then we don't. And I think a lot of people want us to forget that. So these reminders are incredibly important. That I'll close with, because it ties into yesterday, that your story is incredibly important, and that it gets out there to people so that they can hear it and feel it and understand it is incredibly important. And we're not just up against, the mechanisms of politics and government. We are now up against an FCC that is not helping in this regard. And Brennan Carr was on Capitol Hill yesterday, and you went very viral for your line of questioning, because it was excellent. And one of the lines of questioning that you were asking him about was their independence, was the FCC's independence from Donald Trump, as we've seen with what's happened in particular with CBS, right? I mean, CBS, like, I grew up watching 60 Minutes, so it breaks my heart to see what is happening to the institution of 60 Minutes. But you asked him if they were an independent agency, and he said no, essentially. And then it's on their website, and then they went and changed. So let's talk about it real quick.
He even gave remarks to Congress a couple years ago saying that it's an independent agency, and I said that back to him, and it was amazing to see him disagree with his former self. But like, in particular, I asked him, like, is Donald Trump your boss? And he essentially said yes. And I told him that's the wrong answer.
Yeah.
The American people, they're your boss. The oath that we swear, he swore the same oath that I do. It's to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. It doesn't say anything about fealty or loyalty to any president, especially any individual president. And this is where we're losing it. And Joe is like, and it's connected in with all these challenges that people are facing. If you want to know why you pay more for your healthcare, why you pay more for housing, why you pay more for groceries, is because you have a government that is focused on just whatever this president wants to do, which right now is about profiteering off the Oval Office. I keep asking people, Donald Trump has made billions of dollars since January 20th when he was sworn in. How much has your family made since January 20th? And like, instead of the FCC focused on increasing, competition that can drive down prices for consumers, they're focused on going after so-called political enemies of Donald Trump and trying to punish them for their speech criticizing the president. That's a perfect example of the weaponization of government, but also the dereliction of duty to the American people. Instead of focus on things that help us, it's going after and settling political scores. So that's what I hope people see, is the rampant corruption, the breakdown of our democracy. This has real consequences for us, and we pay more money for that. I keep calling this, it's a corruption tax that we pay because of what this administration is doing right now to siphon off so much of the taxpayer dollars and handing it over to the patrons of Donald Trump, whether it's to build a big golden ballroom or it's the billionaires tax relief and the reconciliation bill. That's all part of the same broken system that we see right now.
Yeah. And to your point, the American people are feeling this. I mean, they can scream behind a podium all day long about how hot our country is right now and how everything is moving in the right direction. But we know how much things are costing. We know how worried we are about the price of our electric bills and the price of groceries. That he thinks that's a newfangled word, but you can't tell people that they're not experiencing what they're experiencing.
You can't say it's a hoax, right? Because like, they're feeling it. And whether it's at the grocery store or whether it's, the bill that, we see for these, for these centers where, like my father, they're telling us that we need to get him to a memory care unit. Like, it's enormously expensive. Like, the average cost in our home state in New Jersey for a private room at a senior center is upwards of $15,000 to $17,000 a month. Like, who can afford that? It's outrageous. And it's clearly broken. And why it is, it's because, again, we haven't had a government that's focused on these types of issues. And we need to be able to fix that and have a government that's accountable to the people. And that's hopefully what I'm going to try to help bring about, in my time in the U.S. Senate.
Well, I thank you for everything that you do. I'm so grateful that you are my senator. You are spectacular, and you are really communicating with the American people in such a real and powerful and brave and important way. And you're giving me hope. Moving forward, I can't wait till we have a conversation where you have, the reins of power back in your hands, and we can fully exercise some of this accountability that you're talking about, and we can really actually start having our Congress work for the American people again. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time. My heart again, my heart, love, support always going out to you and your family and all your loved ones and your dad. And I hope you have a
Millions of
wonderful.
other families that are
Yeah,
struggling. It's just like we're all in this together,
we
and
are.
we're all part of something bigger than all of us. And we need to start acting that way. And it means that, like, if we lift each other up, we can move forward. And that's what people want. They're sick and tired of the status quo. They're sick and tired of this broken government. And I think we just need to say enough, and let's try to fix it.
I agree 100%. Thank you so much, Senator Kim. It was wonderful to talk to you. I hope you have a wonderful, happy holiday and a
Yeah,
healthy
happy
and happy
holidays.
new year.
Great. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.